The moment my own father called me a coward in front of an entire room, I realized some wounds cut deeper than bullets. He looked straight at my sister's fiancé, a decorated Navy SEAL, and dismissed me like I was an embarrassment that had wandered into the wrong house. What happened next changed every lie my family had built over the last decade, but to understand why that Navy SEAL suddenly froze when he touched my wrist, we have to go back 2 days. After 6 straight years of deployments, I finally drove back to the house where I grew up. My old Muzzy SUV rattled as it rolled over the gravel driveway overlooking the Northern California coast. The ocean fog hung low across the cliffs, making everything feel quiet and distant. I shut off the engine, grabbed my worn duffel bag, and took one long breath before facing the place I once called home. My father, Preston Hale, was already waiting on the front porch. He did not smile, did not ask how I was doing, and certainly did not welcome me home. Instead, his eyes traveled over my muddy boots and faded field jacket before he pointed toward the narrow path beside the house. He calmly told me to use the back entrance because my stepmother had installed expensive new carpets for the engagement celebration, and he did not want me ruining them. I said nothing. Years in uniform had taught me that not every battle deserved an immediate response. I walked around beside his house carrying my heavy bag while the gravel crunched beneath my boots. Before I even reached the kitchen door, I understood my place in that family had not changed. I was still treated like an outsider standing on borrowed ground. Inside, my younger sister Vanessa greeted me with what looked like a warm hug. It lasted only a second before I realized she never actually touched my jacket. She carefully avoided wrinkling her designer dress, then whispered through a fake smile that her future husband's family would be arriving for dinner. She warned me not to mention anything about the military, to stay quiet, and to help clear dishes after everyone finished eating. As she walked away, my attention landed on the oversized diamond ring sparkling on her finger. I knew exactly how that stone had been paid for. Years earlier, I had wired nearly every hazardous duty payment home, believing I was helping my family survive difficult times. Standing there in that polished kitchen, I suddenly realized those sacrifices had become luxury jewelry instead of security. I carried my duffel upstairs toward what used to be my bedroom. The moment I pushed open the door, my chest tightened. The room where I had studied, dreamed, and planned my future no longer existed. My childhood bedroom had been demolished and turned into a massive designer closet filled with expensive handbags, dresses, and shelves of shoes that belonged to Vanessa. While moving a shoebox to make room for my bag, several old bank papers slipped onto the floor. Curious, I picked one up. My stomach slowly sank as I recognized the account number. It was the savings account my father and I had opened when I worked double shifts at a roadside diner to save money for college. Every paycheck I earned had gone into that account. The final statement showed something I never expected. The balance had been emptied completely years earlier. Every dollar was gone. I checked the withdrawal date twice before the memory hit me. It happened during the exact week Vanessa begged my father for money to rescue her failing fashion business. They had not borrowed from me. They had stolen every cent without telling me. I folded the statement carefully instead of reacting emotionally. Anger solves very little when facts can do the job. I slipped the paper inside my jacket pocket, zipped it closed, and quietly walked downstairs. The evidence rested against my chest while the front doorbell echoed through the house. Vanessa Fiancé, Navy SEAL Commander Nolan Mercer, had just arrived with his family. And something told me this dinner was about to become far more dangerous than anyone expected. The dining room looked like something from a luxury magazine. My father sat proudly at the head of the polished table, while Vanessa and Nolan occupied the seats of honor. Crystal glasses reflected the chandelier light, expensive wine flowed freely, and my chair had been placed beside the kitchen door where servants normally stood. Every detail reminded me that I was expected to stay invisible. Throughout dinner, my father praised Vanessa as though she had built her perfect life through hard work and flawless character. Then his attention shifted toward me. with a smile that barely hid his contempt. He joked that, unlike his younger daughter, I had always run away whenever life became difficult. Several guests laughed politely while pretending not to stare in my direction. An uncle leaned across the table and bluntly asked whether it was true that the military had thrown me out. Before I could answer, Vanessa sighed dramatically and explained that I had abandoned my unit overseas. She spoke with practiced sadness, painting herself as the loving sister forced to carry the shame of my failures. Every word was a lie, but my father sat silently, allowing the story to spread without correction. I never defended myself. Instead, I sat perfectly still, controlling every breath. Years of combat had taught me that calm unsettles dishonest people far more than shouting ever could. Across the table, Commander Nolan Mercer slowly lowered his fork. His sharp eyes examined my posture, my scarred hands, and the disciplined stillness I could not hide. I noticed something change in his expression, as though the story he had been told no longer matched the soldier sitting in front of him. The next afternoon, thick gray clouds rolled over the coastline, while icy wind crashed against the cliffs behind the house. Vanessa insisted on taking engagement photos before the evening celebration, and my assignment was painfully simple. I was expected to carry her oversized makeup bag while she posed for social media pictures. I stayed several yards behind them, keeping quiet and watching the ocean instead of pretending to enjoy the moment. Vanessa barely acknowledged the breathtaking view around her. She was completely focused on perfect angles, expensive jewelry, and flawless lighting. Commander Nolan Mercer stood nearby with his hands tucked into his coat pockets, looking more like a man trapped on a mission than someone celebrating his future marriage. After a few silent minutes, he turned away from Vanessa and walked directly toward me with calm, deliberate steps. Without looking at me, he quietly asked whether I had ever served in the Middle East around 2010. The question sounded casual, but I recognized it for what it really was. He was testing a theory. I answered carefully, saying that after enough deployments, the maps all started blending together. It was not a lie, but it was far from the whole truth. Before either of us spoke again, a powerful gust of wind swept across the cliff. The sleeve of my field jacket rolled upward, exposing the long, jagged scar stretching across my wrist. Nolan instantly froze. His eyes locked onto the damaged tissue with unmistakable recognition. Anyone familiar with military rescue operations knew that wound had not come from an ordinary accident. It was the kind of injury earned while pulling people out of impossible situations. The silence broke when my elderly aunt climbed the trail behind us, complaining about the steep walk. Without realizing the damage she was about to cause, she muttered that my father had hidden my military medal in the attic because he never wanted anyone praising me more than Vanessa. The color drained from my sister's face. Nolan slowly looked from my scar to Vanessa, and in that single moment every lie he had accepted began falling apart. That evening the engagement party filled the house with expensive perfume, loud conversations, and fake smiles. I stayed near the balcony, away from the crowd. Vanessa friends openly mocked me, repeating rumors that I had deserted my unit and been thrown out of the service. Vanessa joined their conversation and pretended to feel sorry for me, telling everyone our family had spent years trying to fix someone who always ran away from responsibility. A businessman who worked with my father eventually staggered over after drinking too much whiskey. He pointed a finger in my face, called me a disgrace, and accused me of surviving while my teammates died. Guest stepped aside, expecting me to lose control. I remained perfectly still, already calculating how to stop him without seriously hurting him if he became physical. Before the man could shove me, a crystal champagne glass slammed onto the marble counter with a thunderous crack. Commander Nolan stepped between us like a solid wall. His calm smile had vanished completely. My father hurried over, expecting to smooth everything out, but Nolan knocked away the hand he tried placing on his shoulder. The entire room fell silent as my father desperately searched for someone else to blame. Trying to regain control, My father laughed and loudly announced that I was nothing more than a coward who had abandoned my fellow Marines. Hearing those words from the man whose approval I had chased my entire life hurt more than any battlefield injury ever had. Nolan reached for my arm to guide me away, but the instant his hand touched the scar on my wrist, his expression changed completely. His breathing caught. He stared at the scar, then looked directly into my eyes before asking one question that stopped the entire room. "Were you the Marine known as Black Falcon?" My father laughed dismissively, insisting I had never been anything more than an office worker. Nolan ignored him. Instead, he called for his uncle, retired Master Sergeant Walter Brooks, who had been quietly attending the celebration with the rest of his family. The decorated veteran stepped into the center of the room and listened, as Nolan asked him to explain Operation Meridian. Every conversation stopped. Walter calmly described the rescue mission where a female Marine ignored evacuation orders, stayed behind inside a collapsing structure, and rescued 6 American operators using nothing but determination and a steel recovery cable that nearly tore her arm apart. Then he explained that the woman had refused public recognition to protect local allies who had risked their own lives. Vanessa completely lost control. She screamed that everyone was lying and begged Nolan to throw me out before I ruined her engagement. Instead, he gently removed her hand from his sleeve and stepped away from her. Looking directly at me, he asked one final question. "Were you that Marine?" I answered with nothing more than a single nod. Without hesitation, Nolan stood at attention and delivered a flawless military salute in front of every guest. Master Sergeant Brooks immediately did the same. The room filled with stunned silence as Nolan addressed me with complete respect, thanking me for saving members of his task force years earlier. Every insult my family had repeated for a decade collapsed beneath the truth in less than a minute. My father tried blaming everything on protecting the family reputation, but nobody believed him anymore. Nolan removed the engagement ring from his pocket, tossed it across the counter, and announced that he would never marry into a family willing to destroy one child just to make another appear successful. One by one, the guests quietly walked out, leaving my father and sister surrounded by the ruins of their own deception. The following morning, I packed my bag, walked through the front door instead of the back, and headed toward my SUV. Nolan waited at the end of the driveway simply to make sure I left safely. We exchanged a few quiet words before he called me by my old military call sign with genuine respect. My father finally appeared on the porch, clearly wanting to apologize, but the words never came. By then, they no longer mattered. As I drove away along the Pacific Coast Highway, I looked at the old bank statement that proved my father had stolen my future years earlier. I could have taken him to court, but revenge would only keep me connected to people who had already taken enough from me. Instead, I tore the paper into tiny pieces and released them into the ocean wind. Freedom is not always winning the fight. Sometimes it is choosing never to fight those people again. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us the bravest decision you have ever made to walk away from toxic people. Your story might inspire someone else to choose peace over pain.